AI systems, and you've spoken extensively how AI systems manipulate you within social networks, and that's the biggest problem. Isn't necessarily that um, there's advertisement that social networks present you with advertisements that then get you to buy stuff. That's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is they then manipulate you. They alter like your human nature to get you to buy stuff, or to get you to do whatever the advertiser wants. Maybe you can correct me,
Yeah,
but
I don't see it quite that way, but we can work with that as an approximation.
sure. So my
I think the actual thing is even sort of more
worst.
ridiculous and stupider than that, but that's okay. Let's
So my question is, let's not use the word AI, but how do we fix it?
Oh, fixing social media. That diverts us into this whole other field, in my view, which is economics, which I always thought was really boring, but we have no choice but to turn into economists if we want to fix this problem, because it's all about incentives. But I've been around this thing since it started, and I've been in the meetings where the social media companies sell themselves to the people who put the most money into them, which are usually the big advertising holding companies and whatnot. And there's this idea that I think is kind of a fiction, and maybe it's even been recognized as that by everybody, that the algorithm will get really good at getting people to buy something. Because I think people have looked at their returns and looked at what happens, and everybody recognizes it's not exactly right.
Mhm.
It's more like a cognitive access blackmail payment at this point. Like just to be connected, you're paying the money. It's not so much that the persuasion algorithms. So Stanford renamed its program, but it used to be called Engage Persuade.
Mhm.
The engage part works. The persuade part is iffy. But the thing is that once people are engaged, in order for you to exist as a business, in order for you to be known
You
at
have to
all,
stay
you
connected.
put money
Oh,
into
that's
the.
dark.
Oh no,
So
that's
it
not no
doesn't
that.
work, but they have to.
But they're still it's a giant cognitive access blackmail scheme at this point. So because the science behind the persuade part, it's not entirely a failure, but it's not what there's we play make believe that it works more than it does.
Mhm.
The damage doesn't come honestly. As I've said in my books, I'm not anti-advertising. I actually think advertising can be demeaning and annoying and banal and ridiculous and take up a lot of our time with stupid stuff. Like there's a lot of ways to criticize advertising that's accurate, and it can also lie and all kinds of things. However, if I look at the biggest picture, I think advertising, at least as it was understood before social media, helped bring people into modernity in a way that overall actually did benefit people overall.
Mhm.
And you might say, "Am I contradicting myself because I was saying you shouldn't manipulate people?" Yeah, I am probably here. I mean, I'm not pretending to have this perfect airtight worldview without some contradictions. I think there's a bit of a contradiction there. So
Well, looking at the long arc of history, advertisement has in some parts benefited society
yeah, because
because it funded some efforts that
it
perhaps
yeah,
benefited
I mean,
society.
I think like there's a thing where sometimes I think it's actually been of some use. Now, let's where the damage comes is a different thing though. Social media algorithms on social media have to work on feedback loops where they present you with stimulus. They have to see if you respond to the stimulus.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that the measurement mechanism for telling if you respond in the engagement feedback loop is very, very crude. It's things like whether you click more, or occasionally if you're staring at the screen more, if there's a forward facing camera that's activated, but typically there isn't.
Hmm.
So you have this incredibly crude back channel of information. And so it's crude enough that it only catches sort of the more dramatic responses from you. And those are the fight or flight responses. Those are the things where you get scared or pissed off or aggressive or horny.
Hmm.
These are these ancient, the sort of what are sometimes called the lizard brain circuits or
Hmm.
whatever, you know, these fast response, old evolutionary business circuits that we have that are helpful in survival once in a while, but are not us at our best.
Mhm.
They're not who we want to be. They're not how we relate to each other. They're this old business. But so then, just when you're engaged using those intrinsically, totally aside from whatever the topic is, you start to get incrementally just a little bit more paranoid, xenophobic, aggressive. You get a little stupid and like you become a jerk, and it happens slowly. It's not like everybody's like instantly transformed, but it does kind of happen progressively, where people who get hooked kind of get drawn more and more into this pattern of being at their worst.
Would you say that people are able to, when they get hooked in this way, look back at themselves from 30 days ago and say, I am less happy with who I am now, or I'm not happy with who I am now versus who I was 30 days ago? Are they able to self-reflect when you take yourself outside of the lizard brain?
Sometimes. I wrote a book about people suggesting people take a break from their social media to see what happens, and
Mhm.
maybe even it was actually, the title of the book was just the arguments to delete your account.
Yeah,
Although
10,
it's very
10, 10 arguments.
10 arguments. Although I always said, I don't know that you should. I can give you the arguments. It's up to you. I'm
Yeah.
always very clear about that. But, I get like, I don't have a social media account, obviously, and it's not that easy for people to reach me. They have to search out an old-fashioned email address on a super crappy, antiquated website. Like it's actually a bit. I don't make it easy, and even with that, I get this huge flood of mail from people who say, "Oh, I quit my social media. I'm doing so much better. I can't believe how bad it was." But the thing is, what's for me a huge flood of mail would be an imperceptible trickle from the perspective of Facebook, right?
Mhm.
And so uh, I think it's rare for somebody to look at themselves and say, "Oh boy, I sure screwed myself over."
Well,
It's a really hard thing to ask of somebody. None of us find that easy, right?